Well, welcome back to our next episode of The Awakened Stranger. And this is Cody, and today we're sitting with Skylar. And here in a second, we'll have her introduce herself and kind of give us an idea of who she is and what's brought her to this part of her life. And we've had some good conversations aside of this, so I'm excited to hear kind of what everything happened or how everything happened and brought us to this point. So, Skylar, if you'd like, go ahead and introduce yourself and share with the listeners kind of what's happened in your life and what's brought you to this point.
Sure. Thanks so much for having me on your show. I'm really happy to share with your audience what happened during my awakening. Um, just to give a little background, I'm a homeschool mom. And, I was a devout Christian when I had my spontaneous awakening. A little bit more of that history. I probably 8 to 10 months prior to what was happening to me, I'm so sorry. Hold on for just 1 second. My daughter just walked in.
No worries. That's the fun part about being home with the kids. I've got a couple little dogs at home too, so I shut the front blinds and keep them from trying to bark. So, but no worries, we've got plenty of time.
Okay, thank you so much. Sorry about that. You had a question. Okay, where was I? Okay, so I want to say 8 to 10 months before the happenings, I was going through a very dark period of time in my life. I felt externally I looked probably okay, but people close to me could see an unraveling. I was unraveling. I want to say it was maybe a mental or emotional breakdown of sorts. And I started seeing a therapist, which was helpful, but I felt like I really needed to do something else. I needed to continue with the therapist, but do my own internal work. I didn't feel like talk therapy was enough, although it was a great benefit to me, and I highly recommend it to anybody who needs that. The internal work I started to do was with a program called 21 Day Brain Detox with Dr. Caroline Leaf. And that really started to help me focus in on where were these triggers coming from, where were these thoughts coming from, and how can I unravel these negative wirings in my brain and pattern something else that's healthier. So anyways, I'm working this process. I'm gaining beautiful healing. I was already a devout Christian. I was already on a spiritual journey. And so with my faith combined with this process of unraveling negative emotions and thoughts, I was really experiencing a level of healing, and people were noticing a difference. So it was pretty amazing. Well, we went into the COVID lockdown, and my best friend had a negative report from her doctor that she was showing signs that she was borderline into lupus and that she needed to do something drastic. So I decided my next brain detox was going to be about health. I was going to do 21 days about my health. And I found this plan from a plant-based doctor. It was a hyper nutrition plan. He cured her stage 4 lupus. And I told my friend, I'm going to do this plan with you so that you're not alone. Let's do it together. I'll upscale my health. I'll help you in this journey to avoid lupus. And so we started this journey. It was 2020 lockdown, or maybe right before the lockdown, but it barreled into the lockdown, focusing on health. Okay, so now here's where the fun part starts. I'm doing this hyper nutrition plan, which was a couple of pounds of dark leafy greens. Cruciferous vegetables were required, fruits. It was high raw vegan lifestyle. Plus you were hyperhydrating, so like a gallon of water. And I just thought, if I'm going to spend the time and the effort to do the diet, we're going to do the other things. We're going to get sunlight. We're going to exercise. We're going to ground. I had learned about grounding some years back from my primary care physician. And then I looked into binaural beats, will train your brain to calm. And I just thought, I'm going to do the whole thing. Well, unbeknownst to me, I had the right ingredients to build what I now know is called easy water in your body. And essentially you're creating this large container around your cells, a battery around your cells, to hold a higher bioelectric charge. Plus, you're feeding your body tons of sulfur from cruciferous vegetables, which feeds your mitochondria and powers your cells. So unbeknownst to me, I was doing all of these things that were building a charge in my body. And I began to feel at night a radiating or a pulsing in certain muscle groups that I had worked out that day. And every time I had these sensations, I just thought, I must have worked out really hard today. Or, when it started flooding my whole body up and down, I would feel these waves of heat and tingling and radiating. I would think, oh man, I'm learning how to really relax. This is what it feels like to really relax. And it was an enjoyable feeling to me. I was not scared. I just thought my body was changing and becoming healthier. Then it started to increase to the point where I had this expanding and contracting feeling, like the feeling you get when you put opposing magnets together and there's a push.
Yeah.
There was this push, expanding and contracting very rhythmically out of my body, sometimes to the point, and this is mostly at night, by the way, sometimes to the point where I didn't feel like I had skin anymore, that I was this ball of energy, and I wouldn't be able to feel the bed I was laying in. I would sometimes feel like I was floating. And it was very strange to me, but it felt wonderful. It was so relaxing. And so I was never afraid. I just thought, this is very strange, but I like it. So I just would relax and go to sleep. And by the way, I want to say that I was doing the binaural beats morning and night in this process. So imagine I'm relaxing for bed. I've got my binaural beats going on in my ears, and my body is relaxing for sleep, and I'm having these wild sensations. That starts spilling over into my daily life. In the mornings, or I go to pray for someone, my body would start pulsing, sometimes spontaneously, just pulsing, and I didn't understand why. But again, I liked the way that it felt. I wasn't afraid of it. And then it grew to such an increase that I would fall asleep at night and I would have these sensations, like I'd wake up to the sound of white noise and the sound of a zipper, and I would feel like the center of my body was lifting up. And I kind of freaked out once because I thought, I'm leaving my body. And I freaked out and grabbed the bed. That kind of stuff just kept increasing. And then one night I woke up to the pulsing at the base of my spine, and I think to myself, this is going to be relaxing. I'll just relax and let it do whatever it's going to do. It moves up the center of my body, and every area it enters through, when it gets to my abdomen, when it gets to my adrenal area, everything starts pulsing again with this expanding and contracting feeling. It moves all the way up the center of my body, my throat. The intensity around my throat almost felt like an external pressure around my throat. It was so intense. And then it would move up to my head, and I had this explosion happening in my brain. My brain felt like I was having this intense orgasm. High-pitched sound was coming out of my head. My earbuds would start distorting, and my body would start convulsing to the same rhythm of the distortion. And I was like, my mind was alert, but my body felt paralyzed, like sleep paralysis, but not in a fearful way. I was relaxed, let it do whatever it was doing. When the aftershocks would die down, I would have this flooded warmth from head to toe, and it had this sense of love. My whole body was flooded with this euphoric feeling of love. And I filtered it through what I knew in my Christian roots. I recognized this love. This is the love of God. And so that whole experience was filtered through what I knew. I'm experiencing some kind of supernatural healing, and the love of God is flooding my body, and something miraculous is happening. And so every time this event would start to happen, because it would happen randomly, I was never afraid. I would just thank God he's doing a miracle in my body and relax and let it happen. Every time I had these experiences, for days, the pulsing would just be through the roof. I couldn't hold electronics without pain. I became so sensitive to electromagnetic frequencies. And after a while, I started to experience spontaneous extrasensory perception. I would know things that were going to happen that day. I would hear people's thoughts before they spoke. It was a wild, wild time. And those kinds of situations started to make me question, okay, I feel God in this, which, by the way, during my waking day, my relationship with God felt like it intensified, like I was wrapped in a bubble of love, and all I wanted to do was live in this love, and I wanted my life to be marked by the love of God. So my interactions with people, even though I had human moments, I could easily shift out of negativity or feeling, maybe victimized or attacked. And I could easily switch, like easily forgive, easily ask for forgiveness and move out of those emotions. It was an incredible experience. And, but when those other things started happening, these anomalous things, I began to question, what is this? What's happening? In a good way, though. I still felt like God is in it, but there's something else I don't understand that's happening. I began to have these large downloads, like, this sounds cliche. I know everybody says this, but I would feel suddenly, I know, like I know my name, that we're all connected. And we're all connected through the love of God. Like, that was very foreign to me, being a Christian, because Christians have a perception of not kind of an us and them, like we're all God's creation, but, Christians are following God and connected to God, and then there's others that aren't. So you have this kind of us versus them mentality, but it didn't feel that way in that moment. It felt like we are all connected to God. Mm-hmm. Which sometimes I now say source. I understand that now, where people say source and divine and love. It just feels so much bigger than the word God. Mm-hmm. I started to have other downloads. Like I felt like I understood things about our DNA and why it's in a double helix. Started to understand this electric pulse was like this frequency that had us all connected, and this was how prayer was working at a distance, and this is how healing was working. It's this bioelectricity that is the life of God in all of us. I just started having these wild ideas about things. I was kind of a space cadet around that time. Something interesting that happened was I put my hand on a tree just casually, and my hand went nuts with pain, like when I held my cell phone. And I started to realize the trees are electric, and I didn't know this at the time. And then I had the urge to touch trees. Like I had to touch them, and I started to relax and then hug them with some kind of emotional intention. And instead of receiving like pain in my body, I would feel the wave of energy or frequency, and I would begin to merge with the pulsing coming out of the tree. It feels like you're being gently rocked by the ocean at low tide. It's an incredible feeling. I became obsessed. I had to touch the trees. I had to hug the trees. And at some point, I instinctively started greeting the trees like they were alive, like they were sentient. And I had no idea that there was this whole other world where scientists were discovering trees are sentient, plants are sentient, that there's a level of intelligent communication. I didn't know these things, but I did all of these experiences sparked an incredible hunger in me to learn what was happening to me. What are these things that I feel like I know so deeply? Why am I obsessed with the trees? I kind of thought I was going a little crazy at one point. Like, why do I want to talk to trees? because this was so far from the world I lived in, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I found the research and I just ate it all up, the brain-body connection and quantum entanglement and, the secret lives of trees. And I stumbled upon, information about heart-brain coherence. And it felt like that was the language to explain how I felt when I was connecting to God. And then I found HeartMath was doing a tree project. They were studying the effect of human emotion on trees and trees' effect on humans. So I just was floored that this was actually real, what I was experiencing, what I was feeling. And I just started like unraveling and peeling like layers of dogma and having these wild understandings that were making me change.
Yeah.
I was changing overnight pretty radically. I had these strange experiences where I would feel the pulsing. Sometimes when it wasn't moving up the center of my body, every night I was buzzing and pulsing and expanding. And I remember one night falling asleep and I didn't have the movement at the center of my body, but I woke to a man whispering in my ear. And I jolted and jumped out of bed, expecting there was a man crouched by the side of my bed. But there was no one there. And I had to pull my earbud out of my ear and scratch the inside of my ear because the vibration was causing it to tickle. And that just started breaking my paradigm as well. I started to realize that falls in line with this whole idea of like EVPs, electronic voice phenomenon from disembodied people. That was breaking my paradigm, like, are there disembodied people around me all the time? And so I had one of these experiences where the electrical energy started moving up the center of my body. I'm in this mind alert, body asleep state, and I'm hearing my room is filled with people whispering. I cannot make out what they're saying, but they're like in the back of the room whispering. And as that pulsing energy starts getting closer and closer to my head, the voices are getting louder and louder until it's right at my neck. And it sounds like the people are standing right by my ear. They're all whispering all at the same time. I cannot make out what they're saying. And then once the energy hits my head, I'm having the same like explosion in my head, high-pitched sound, my body's convulsing, and the whispering is gone. I still don't know what on earth is that. Some of my research says that when people have these like spontaneous Kundalinis, I'm sorry, hold on 1 second. Somebody's calling and I'll send them to voicemail.
No worries.
Okay. Some people say that it's the voices of your ancestors when you're having this Kundalini awakening. I have no idea what it is, but I know that it was real, that it happened. And it just started breaking my paradigm.
And kind of to add to that, because I've had those very similar experiences on almost everything you've explained, full body tingles, kind of the whole Kundalini, shaking your whole body, if you will. And I've even had that where I've been in meditations, and you talk about binaural beats, and I've used the meditation tapes from the Gateway experience and got into a lot of those like very, very deep focus levels, to the point where I've also heard, what I thought was somebody speaking to me in my room. So my understanding of that is right, we're now elevating our frequency and able to hear into higher dimensions. And you mentioned too, like our ancestors could be the ones guiding us and being there as our spirit guides. And my grandma has passed recently, or a few years ago, and I've felt her presence quite strongly in the last couple months, and to the point where I even hear her voice sometimes, and it's very unique how she's it feels like she's almost working within my life of kind of guiding and directing things. And and it just real quick, I'm going to throw a side story in there, but my little brother right now is currently in the hospital. He had a really just stupid accident sitting on a computer chair, rolls down the driveway at my mom's house and smashes this chair and his body into the side of a big utility box.
Oh
ended
no.
up breaking 6 ribs. He's ruptured his spleen. He's had multiple surgeries this last week, but he he's gone through some really bad problems with pain addiction or pain pill addictions and oxy. And my honest belief is my grandma is actively working in his life, telling him to knock his shit off. Right?
Oh wow.
This box that he hit before she had passed, and a long time ago, she painted a stop sign on this utility box. And it was more of a representation for the grandkids, where my mom lives in my grandma's house right now, or she bought the home and they've built onto it. But this stop sign was painted there so the grandkids knew not to go past the stop sign and closer to the road, right? And more of a safety thing. And that's the box that my brother smashed into. And he's 43 years old, right? He was just acting like an idiot, riding a computer chair down the driveway, a little bit of a downhill slant, and crashed into this and ended up breaking everything in his body. But I have this feeling that that was her message to him, saying, you better knock it off. You need to stop, right? You need to stop with the pain pills, stop with the addictions, because you're ruining your life. And if you don't stop, things are going to break even more, is kind of the message that it
Right.
feels like. And to know that not only are we tapping into that within our own frequency and hearing that within our space, but seeing how that could be helping and working through other people. At least for me, that's the perception I'm taking from it. But I definitely know that our loved ones are there watching us and guiding us through this new change. Right, we're ultimately changing the world. We're changing ourselves, and I think
Right.
there's a lot of people that are going through this awakening. And more so, what I found is a Kundalini awakening is very rare. It's not as common as people that are waking up to just an understanding or kind of seeing through the veil of the matrix. But sounds like to me that there's something very special within you to have a Kundalini awakening as well. So very cool.
I mean, I don't know. I didn't know anything about it, and I wasn't trying to make anything happen. I was just doing what I did as a Christian, and I was already on a spiritual journey connecting to God.
Mm-hmm.
What I forgot to mention was before the start of this, part of that healing process was coming to a level of acceptance and just realizing how loved I was, and that for the first time in my life, I decided I was going to love and accept myself where I am on my journey, because I felt that God wasn't surprised by any choices I had made, right or wrong. And there was still this unconditional love there for me. And so I could love and accept myself. And then I decided I was going to love and accept other people. And that was something happening in me prior to the start of everything. And I'm wondering if some of that also put me in a position of letting go of harboring anger, and letting go of unforgiveness and forgiving myself, and really just dwelling in this place of love. I feel like love is such an important thing. It's everything, actually. The
Mm-hmm.
love of God, loving ourselves, and loving other people. And it's important to our journey as human beings. So
Yeah. Well, and you
yeah.
talk about kind of finding your attraction, if you will, to trees and being a part of that. I've had my same. I call it my tree friend, but it's to the point now where I take my dogs for a 2.5 mile walk every day just so I can go see my tree. And
Right.
and it is there's thousands of trees in my neighborhood in the area, and I pass a bunch of them, but there's a certain tree that just seems like it reached out and called to me, and it's been kind of my
I
special
believe it.
friend. So
Yeah, I believe it. There's a connection. And so
mhm.
you should definitely look up the Heart Math 3 project. I think that you'll find some interesting
Yeah.
data in that. So I wanted to share a few of the other anomalous things that happened, because I feel part of the reason why I'm sharing is I've been keeping things hidden and private. I am in religious circles. I'm married to a pastor. And so I have to keep part of this hidden. But recently I began to feel like I need to share this for those that are experiencing it, to be validated that you're not crazy, that there is an awakening happening in people. And I don't know how all of this fits together. It's like I'm trying to still figure out, how do I integrate all of this with also identifying as a Christian, and a lot of things are evolving and changing for me, but somehow it feels like it's all in the same dimensional aspect, if I could say it that way. This like broadening of your bandwidth, so that you are aware of other energies and subtle information. There was this thing that happened that's also just kind of set me on a search. Another time that I'm experiencing this Kundalini awakening, in my mind's eye, I suddenly can see, which was my first time, I would say, remote viewing. And standing over my body was the silhouette of a human, but there was no face, no clothes. It was just blue light that was moving around. And this being had its hands over me while the energy was moving my body. And once I had the explosion in my head, the image was gone. Excuse me. When I woke up in the morning, I thought, that's strange. My brain came up with this blue being to kind of make sense of what was happening to me. And I just put it in my back pocket, like, this is a strange experience, but I don't know that it was real. It felt, my eyes were not physically open. But even though I felt like my brain was alert and I definitely had a biological experience, it felt like I'm not sure this was real or if it was a dream state. So I waited a while, and when I started getting feedback on the extrasensory perceptive data, and I could say, okay, for sure, I'm picking up information, something is happening, then I decided, okay, I'm going to look into this blue being. And when I started doing my research, my brain exploded. So many people experiencing blue beings, although a lot of people's description were different than mine, but I have found some people talking about this blue being with no face, no features really at all. It was like a silhouette of light. I've heard people call it liquid or plasma or gaseous, and I would say all of that fits what I saw. So that's been pretty incredible. Don't know what it means. I don't know where it came from. Some people associate with like the UFO phenomenon. Some people are saying it's like interdimensional and related to healing, which his hands were over me when I was having this electrical experience. So I don't know. I'm cautious to like label it, but I know that it happened, and I believe that it was real. And I feel like I need to talk about it because there's other people experiencing this.
Yeah, and you're within just the podcast calls, I've probably had 5 or 6 other people reference a ball of light, right? A blue ball of white, a light ball of white, a white light, a blue light. And and again, this is from my experience, and everybody's could be different, but I've also experienced that in an aspect where I think I was able to hold on to a frequency long enough to kind of get an understanding of what it was. And for me, it was what I felt like was my higher self showing me my light body, right? And I think maybe that was something too that you might have been kind of maybe shown as just a version of yourself, your higher self as your light body. Because as we exit this physical realm, that's what we do, is we become our light body.
Right. And it's very possible. Yeah.
Knowing that, right, your higher self is only going to be the one that knows exactly what your physical body needs to heal, and so you've got calling in your higher self, your light body is helping to heal and purify your physical body. So just from my experience, that's what it felt like for me, was just a version of my higher self presenting itself to me in a way that I could understand it. Because outside of physical features, our light body doesn't need a face. It doesn't need all the human characteristics. It's just pure energy. So
right.
Yeah.
Well, there is an experiencer who came out recently with his experience, but his was related to feeling like he was taken somewhere in a craft and given a download, and now he's doing things that don't make sense. Like, he went from a construction worker to now doing like quantum physics and engineering. So I don't know. I'm definitely open to a plethora of ideas of what it could be. I'm just cautious to label it, so that I'm open to hearing more about what it potentially could be. But I am on the hunt for information. So
Yeah.
thinking about maybe starting some kind of social media meetup spot for everybody experiencing this blue being face, so we can talk about it. But it's very interesting, and at least, and I've met some other good friends that have seen this blue being as well. So that was interesting. I stumbled upon information of people in Dr. Joe Dispenza's seminars that were having a healing done and experiencing these blue beings showing up in the middle of the healing. So again, it's just pretty wild to me. Mm-hmm. But then there's also people in the UFO space saying they're encountering a being that maybe looked different, but there was a blue light with this whole phenomenon. So it's very interesting. I heard one physicist say that the blue light is a type of high frequency. So who knows? Yeah. Right. But but speaking of UFOs, I in this time frame where I'm having these biological experiences, I start researching the blue beings, and I'm stumbling upon, information about that space, the UAP space. And I had no idea in 2020 that there had been some UFO stuff leaked. That 2017, there was an article written by the New York Times, and people coming out about a secret program. I had no idea that was going on, and I was getting downloads when I was doing this research that UAPs and consciousness were connected deeply, and I didn't know how, and I didn't know at the time that was being talked about. So it was pretty interesting. But I had an experience on New Year's Eve of 2021, probably 20 to 30 minutes after the ball dropped. I was taking my trash out to my trash can and rolling my trash can out to the street. And I have this feeling like I know that there's beings in the sky. And I decide to get buzzy and pulsing, which at that point I knew how I could turn it on. And I start having this conversation with them about what a great perspective they had in the sky of the fireworks and stuff. And at that point, there weren't any fireworks really going on. It was like a distant pop here or there. But I assumed that they had seen, all the fireworks in the sky, and told them not to be afraid. This was a celebration. What a great, point of view they had. And I turned to go back inside. I didn't expect anything. I wasn't asking to be shown anything. I turned to go back inside, and when I faced the lake, there was this largest light I've ever seen, reddish orange sphere. Outside was expanding and contracting rhythmically like lungs breathing in air. And it moved across the lake very fast. I'd say within 30 seconds or less, went behind a cloud, and I could no longer see it, which was pretty incredible. I've never seen anything like it. No blinking lights, no features, no sound, no smoke. I would say it was probably about the size, if you open up the palm of your hands and you draw a circle in your hand, it's probably about that large up in the sky. Largest thing I'd ever seen up in the sky. And I've never seen anything like it since. And I have tried my best to think of all the prosaic things it could have been, and it just feels like it doesn't match. So interestingly enough, I did file with Americans for Safe Aerospace, which is Ryan Graves' organization, and I did speak to an analyst that found that, encounter interesting. I just thought I'd throw that out there. I don't know how it all fits. I'm having these, wild encounters everywhere that just feel like they move from spiritual to disembodied people to ESP to UFO, like
Yeah.
wild.
Well,
it's just been wild.
And I've kind of,
my life was turned upside down.
yeah, and I've kind of gone through that whole thing too. It's like there's hundreds of different topics of everything that's combined or interacting to each other, right?
Yes, yes.
And yeah, between a higher awareness of frequency to understanding energy to, and I've even shared with my wife, I said, I feel like there's going to be a day where we're just all of a sudden going to see, looking up at the sky, we're no longer going to see the atmosphere of the earth. We're going to see the universe. And
Oh, wow.
and I reference that to even, and as crazy as it sounds, right? The movies like Star Wars, Star Trek, right? Other galactic beings and different races. And I have a full belief that they're, and for me, I guess, right? If we can believe that there's life on Earth and that we're just one tiny speck in the whole galaxy, the universe, then there would have to be an understanding that there's life somewhere else. And
Right.
and that's what I have this whether it's a hope or it's a belief or an understanding. I think there is life, there's entities, there's different races of civilizations out there that are currently watching Earth right now as we're kind of rising the frequency of the planet. I've had this understanding, right, that there's a huge audience, if you will, out there watching as what we're doing as light workers and people that are here helping raise the frequency of the Earth to bring planet Earth into a higher dimension. I feel like they say it's a great show, right? The Great Awakening is just part of humanity waking up to what's going on, but I think there's even a bigger story unfolding right now, where we are eventually going to see the rest of the universe and realize that we're just a part of something even bigger. So I don't know.
It definitely feels that way.
Yeah. It's the only thing that makes sense logically in my human brain that says, right, if all of this has to be happening, it's all got to be tied together, and then everything kind of lines up. It just makes sense that there is entities or beings or spacecraft or anything else out there. There has to be some sort of way to travel within the universes. So it all makes sense.
We just haven't figured it out. Right,
Yep.
right. I agree. We just haven't figured it out yet.
So
that has definitely put a spark in me right now to follow disclosure, and what's happening in terms of like congressional hearings and public announcements and the current release of files from the Department of War, like what's coming out. And funny enough, some of the files that have come out are about fiery orbs.
Yeah.
So I feel validated in what I saw. But yeah, I really wanted to share that with people because I thought, it already sometimes feels like you're experiencing something beyond reality and you're having to do this like reframing of reality. But sometimes I feel like if you're really entrenched in a religion, then there's like an extra level of judgment and layers to unravel, not just this idea of like, I sound kind of crazy, but experiencing it, acknowledging it, integrating it, that's a journey.
It's not an easy one, is it?
It can feel very lonely.
Oh.
Especially initially, I did not feel like I could tell anyone. And I had to start looking for community online. And the little tiny bit that I would let out of the bag to family members, I would wait to see responses. And there were just some that their responses told me that they were not ready to hear everything. And some of them I probably already said too much because I just don't think that they can receive it. But, it's not my job to force it on anybody if they're not ready to hear about it and if they're not ready to receive it. Like, they have a journey and I have a journey. Yeah. And so I'm learning to accept that and be okay with that too.
Yeah, and that's for me too, because I got into, and I'm going to back up just a little bit to like the binaural beats and getting into those types of meditations and getting really to the part where I was aware of astral projection, remote viewing, lucid dreaming, and that became such a highly focused area of my life for a long time that there was a lot of times that I would get into these deep, deep meditative states and become aware of higher dimensions, even to the point of in astral projection at night. I know I'm consciously leaving my body every night, and I've recently become aware of what type of work that I do on a soul level each night, and had harder and harder times kind of incorporating myself back into my body in the morning, right? It takes me sometimes 45 minutes to an hour just to feel grounded when my body wakes up and my soul and my consciousness reattaches to my body. Like I've
Oh,
had to
wow.
give myself this like hour process now of regrounding and reconnecting to my body every morning, because I've become more and more, I guess, aware of what happens when our bodies go to sleep, and where our consciousness
Yeah.
goes. And in those spaces I've started almost and I don't want to say confused, but sometimes it's harder for me to realize the difference between physical reality and this higher dimension. And I almost, I don't want to say got lost, but there was a moment where I was having a hard time differentiating between the two realities. You know, I was
Mm.
almost living this whole new life in a higher realm every night. And it wasn't like a dream where you'd go to sleep, have a dream, and wake up and you knew that that was a dream. I was living like as my higher self in a whole nother dimension, and having a hard time integrating back into physical reality. And
Oh, wow.
and I've almost had to put that practice on pause, because it was kind of creating me a lot of confusion in what am I actually doing in my physical life versus like another dimension. And it's I don't know if it's caused me to be scared, if you will, or just realizing that we are just in living in a very blip of a space in time right now in this physical realm. and and it's very different. But it, yeah, to kind of keep my brain straight, or at least like not feel like I'm completely going crazy, I've had to kind of pause on this meditative practice, because it got super deep, super intense really fast for me. um,
Yeah.
but yeah, recently
Yes, I
I've been,
can feel that.
yeah, I've had a lot of dreams too lately, where I knew that that was a dream, but it felt like I was being kind of almost visited, if you will, by other dimensional beings. Had some really
Um,
cool interactions. But you know, when I talk about different entities or different races out there in the universe, you know, the grays is what I would reference them as, but just beings of in my dream, I guess, or in my vision, if you will, it was presented to me as an animal that then became a person while they presented themselves to me.
wow.
And actually watched the
Wow.
transformation, and then had communication with these beings, but it was not verbal, it was telepathic. And just some pretty cool stuff. But it's sometimes I wonder, I'm like, okay, am I going crazy? Right? In my mom's side of the family, both my grandma and grandpa have had psychosis, they've had dementia, they've had a lot of mental health issues. And so sometimes I question myself, like, am I actually experiencing something supernatural phenomenon, you know, something from a higher dimension, or am I just going crazy?
Great.
And so it's caused a lot of doubt in my head lately. And it's one of those. So at least talking to you and hearing some similar experiences, I'm like, all right, if I'm crazy and you're crazy, then at least we're on the same crazy wavelength. But I don't think that's the
I don't,
case, right? I think it's something
yeah, I
higher than
don't
that.
think that you're crazy. Yeah, I don't think that you're crazy at all. I do think that you should, you know, record these things, don't
Hmm.
forget these things. But I do think we live in this 3D reality, and that we have to find the balance right now,
Yeah.
because I could tell you that that space of time, that 8 to 10 months, I was an absolute space cadet, but I also had these really strong feelings like I didn't want to experience negative things. I didn't things that I used to enjoy, like thrill rides. I didn't want to experience that fear, even though it was a fun fear. I don't know. I avoided it like crazy. Crowds were difficult for me, and I just found that it was easy for me to live in my head in this other space, because I would feel my body was pulsing, and I would just feel my space. And so I think maybe there's ebbs and flows to this on purpose. Maybe there's seasons where it's pretty wild, so we can get some understanding of
Hmm.
what's really going on around us that we can't see in other realms, other dimensions. I feel like those dimensions are happening around us, but we don't have the broadband to experience it fully all the time.
Yeah.
But also, maybe we're not supposed to all the time, because we are 3D, we have families, You know, there are natural things that we have to do. And so perhaps that's why there's like an ebb and flow to this, so that we stay grounded in this reality as well.
Yeah.
That's how I feel about it anyways. But
well, I've listened to a lot of stuff from Dolores Cannon and a lot of the methods that are the theories that she has with the shift and right the separation from 3D to 5D, and a lot of those theories state, right, our physical body can't handle a massive increase in frequency, and that's why we're seeing these slow spikes in the Schumann resonance, and we're seeing the Earth, the solar flares are slowly activating our DNA, and we're slowly increasing our vibration, because doing it all at once, our body wouldn't be able to handle it, and we would probably not be able to stay alive, right, as a physical vessel here. So
right.
And that's the hard part for me, because I'm like, I feel like I have this understanding of what's coming, or what the end result looks like, but it's like we're in the process of getting there, and it's not very fast. And so
Right.
I'm like,
We gotta
come
be
on,
patient.
like this is, yeah, I feel like that's like the ultimate lesson for a lot of people, is learning patience, because I'm such an immediate I want something happening now, and I think, first of all, I think social media has kind of wrecked that for a lot of us. We're in such a high demand for instant gratification that we want something right now. And I think that's, at least for me, that's the lesson that it feels like for me, is I got to learn patience and kind of sit within the moment. But there's definitely something big changing and something happening, and a lot of people are becoming aware of it.
Yes.
So
Yes.
that's what I think is
Definitely.
exciting, is it's no longer just one person having experience, or a few people. It's becoming global. It's coming a larger collective of people realizing the changes. So it's very cool.
Agreed.
So what do you kind of see kind of moving forward? What is areas that you've been focusing on, and what's kind of been helping you kind of get through these times?
Sure, yeah. Glad you brought that up. I wanted to say that things haven't been like a bed of roses for me. While the energy started kind of dying down, and I had less and less of that spontaneous electrical stuff, I began the process, manifested this move. My family moved from one place to another, one state to another. And, I began to kind of spill into a new life. My body started to experience some negative things, and it took me a little while to realize my body was transitioning, like all women's bodies transition into, a stage where you stop producing hormones, you're in perimenopause. And not to get too personal, but it has caused a bit of a struggle for me physically. And so the focus has kind of been more internalized, and finding my new normal, working on healing, been working on like a lot of meditation and trying to build out that energy again. As well, I've been focused on developing some extrasensory skills. I've been working on remote viewing and other skills to try to learn how to direct perception. It still happens spontaneously, but not as often, I think, because the energy has died down a little bit. And as well, I've done a lot of research on how a person can build up that electricity in your body. Really, when it comes to this whole easy water, which I'm very thankful to Dr. Gerald Pollock and his work, introducing everyone to this fourth phase of water, also known as easy water. You can go look up his work, but he talks about ways that you can build easy water in your body. I didn't know that at the time, but now doing the research, I feel like I can almost back engineer this buildup of energy. So that's kind of what I've been focused on now, is settling into my new normal, being a mom. We homeschool, and then kind of building up this bioelectricity again. I feel like it's super important that humans raise their bioelectricity. You could also say raise your frequency. I think they're one and the same. I also feel like bioelectricity is related to God. So for those of you that, believe in the life of God or the breath of God, I feel like it is one and the same. This bioelectricity is in all living things on planet Earth, and probably out in the universe as well. But it's really important that we build up this bioelectricity, and there's spiritual practices you can do But as well, there's natural things that you can do for your body to build up this bioelectricity. And so that's kind of the journey that I'm currently on.
Nice.
Healing, and as well, how can I help other people learn about building up their bioelectricity?
Mm-hmm. So with
and then
this
developing.
with this living water and that, is there a process in kind of generating that, or what have you learned so far?
Yeah, I have to again point to the work of Gerald Pollack, and then also a scientist by the name of Dr. Stephanie Seneff. The two of them really have keys in their research that I feel match my experience. First off, plants already have easy water in their body and their systems. So when you juice plants, you're immediately putting easy water into your body. Being hydrated with good, clean water is another way that you can help your body have the tools it needs to build this easy water. And then if you're flooding your body with plant nutrients, I was also taking supplements at the time I was doing this. Again, you're flooding your body with what it needs to build up the capacity of this battery built around your cells, which gives you the capacity to hold more of a charge. And then in Dr. Stephanie Seneff's work regarding all your cells, well, really your mitochondria build up the power in your cells. It's what you're feeding your mitochondria. And in her research, she shows that sulfur is super important. What you're going to find in cruciferous vegetables, namely in broccoli, like I was eating a lot of broccoli at the time, raw broccoli, kale, things like that. When you're flooding your body, that those nutrients are going into your interstitial fluid and is available then to your mitochondria. And if you feed your mitochondria the right stuff, then they can fully charge your cells. I was also doing physical things like rebounding. There's scientific research out there about how rebounding causes charge in your cells. It's like exercising your cells. So there's that. Rebounding basically is a mini trampoline for anybody who's not familiar with that.
Yeah.
Also, lifting weights and doing kind of strenuous exercise that creates heat in your body. I was doing sunlight. Infrared is super important to building up easy water in your body. And I was doing grounding, which grounding also affects this easy water in your system. So, yeah, and melatonin also and melanin play a role. I'm not sure I quite understand the exact mechanisms on how they play a role. They are significant. Sleep is significant. Blocking blue light at sunset is really important to build up your natural melatonin. And then also getting out in the sun, you're also helping melanin, right? Raise melanin in your body. And you have neuromelanin as well. So even if you're very fair-skinned, it's super important. Sunlight is still super important to you, and melanin is still super important to you. It has a lot of functions in your body besides your skin pigments and protecting you from UV rays. So there's some research out there that implies that melanin can play a role in making you sensitive to electromagnetic fields. So I don't know if you've heard of the research about certain animals being able to detect magnetic north. They have things in their body and in their brains, and there's signs that humans have magnetite in our brains that potentially at one point in our history, maybe we were able to detect magnetic north. And so I find that super interesting that there are mechanisms in our body, technology in our body that perhaps are lying dormant.
No, and I fully agree with that because, right, we're aware that if you just reference our aura, right, just the energy within our body, our torus field, we radiate an electromagnetic field naturally, as well as the earth, and just being grounded, standing on earth, you connect those energy fields, and there is right? When you talk about even trees in the planet, the mycelium that grows within it's the largest
Yes.
network of communication between all plants, right? There is a
Yes.
communication happening within this world through an electromagnetic field that is undeniable and is proven by science, right?
Yeah.
With everything. So
Yes.
if
It's
it's
incredible.
possible that a plant can communicate through electronic pulses, right? Then it's possible that we do too. And and
Yes.
I think of
Agreed.
too, like right, as you're talking about like being aware of other dimensions and other frequencies. I use the reference a lot of like a radio station, right?
Yes.
In
We're
Utah,
biological radio stations.
yep.
Yes.
And that's kind of my understanding of what our human brain is our brain is not a location for knowledge or storing information. Our brain is just a receptive antenna. We're using that to communicate through collective consciousness, and that's kind of the
It,
example I use, right? In Utah, if you want to listen to country music, you turn your radio station to 93.3, right? Cable, it's a radio station here in Utah for country. Same radio station playing at the exact same time on a different frequency at 97.1 FM is a hip hop and pop station. And now both of those are happening at the exact same time. It's just a matter of what frequency you're tuned into to hear that station. And that's how I believe that our brain is using the ability to communicate through different dimensions or different perceptions of our reality is what. Well, that was kind of a really weird situation. We were finishing our phone call and the app froze on me. So maybe there was information that we were talking about that wasn't ready to get shared, or maybe just a weird glitch in technology. I do know that they had said they were shutting down CERN the other day, and maybe we're going to have some weird timeline glitches. So maybe that's something that happened. Maybe it was just a weird technology glitch. But there was a few minutes of this call that didn't get recorded with the glitch here in the software. And so I think what we'll do is we'll plan for a second follow-up call, and we'll get the rest of this information out. But thank you again for sharing this space with us and for being a part of this call. And I appreciate you very much. Do find yourself at the support group if you'd like to communicate and kind of just have more conversations with people that have been a part of this podcast. We've got a support group on Facebook. It's at The Awakened Stranger. And then as well as the podcast calls. If you'd like to join the call or have an episode where you get to share your information, share your story, I have links to the Google Calendar on both my TikTok page and Instagram. So on TikTok, you can find me at Cody Rampton, and there's a link to the Google Calendar there where you can select a time slot and have a phone call with me and get your information out there. And then as well, I've duplicated everything onto Instagram, so you can find me there at The Awakened Stranger, and those links are on the bio page as well. Hope you have a great day, and I truly appreciate you, and thanks for sharing this space with us. Well, have a good day, and we'll talk to you soon.